This is a long one. Hope you're ready. So, here's an interesting topic. My story. My story is, for lack of a better word, tough, man. So when I was born to a mother and a father, just like everybody else. Well, not like everybody else. There are a lot of people that are born without their fathers. There are a lot of people that lose their mothers in birth. So I was fortunate enough to be born to a mother and a father. My father decided he didn't want to be with us anymore when I was 2-ish, I think. And so he bolted out. And that left me and my brother, shall remain nameless, with my mom. And that was kind of where it all started. So my mom was a boisterous, fantastically outspoken woman that was evil as fucking hell. It wasn't long after she split from my father, or after my father just left, fucker just up and disappeared. But anyway, it wasn't long after that before she met my father, or the guy that I really actually technically call my dad. And he was my stepdad, but still he was my dad, he raised me. And so that's kind of when everything went downhill. My mother was good at being a mom in some respects, but my dad, the new guy, he was young. He didn't have any life experience, dude. The guy, dropped out of high school, which is fine. I did it myself, but got out of that and got straight into this relationship with 2 kids. Now that's a lot for anybody to choke down, especially back then. The world was different. People were thinking about things differently than we do now. And here we had this guy who had a violent upbringing himself. His father was mean and aggressive and solved things by yelling at them and by hitting them. And it wasn't far off. Now, it wasn't always that way in the beginning. And my mom wasn't crazy to start with. She was probably a really loving mom. I actually have a very few, very faint memories of her, wanting to kiss us goodnight. But it wasn't long, and all that changed. My mom began to go down a slow downhill decline. It was both situational, mindset, and emotional, and honestly, we believe there might have been something wrong with her, like chemically. Even she believed it. And so what eventually wound up happening was we were in a home to where my mother believed that she was stuck with a shitty set of cards and there was nothing she could do to change it. And that was reflected out on myself, my brother, eventually my sister, and my dad. And my dad, in turn, didn't know how to respond, and so he responded to what he was met with. And it was a pretty violent outbringing. So my brother got out, I got out, and when I got out, man, shit was bad. It was bad, I'm not even gonna lie. But when I finally got out, I was kind of on my own. I had a bunch of friends. They were really, really cool. They took care of me, but I didn't have a good view of the world. My whole world was broken and not, what's the word I'm looking for? Not as it should have been. My viewpoint on the world was negative. So everyone was out to get me. Everyone was out to do me wrong. And that was a viewpoint that I had difficulty breaking because it was what had been ingrained into me. It was what had been beaten into me. So years would pass, I would meet a woman, we would get married, we would get divorced, more years would pass, and in all of these years, I was doing a shitload of drugs, man, and I mean a shitload, like literally a metric ass load of drugs. You name it, I did it. Crack, didn't do. Meth, didn't do. Everything else, fuck yeah, I did it, because back then, we're talking, 23 years ago, dude, I mean, cocaine, freebasing, freaking tons of weed, mescaline, acid, peyote, freaking more acid, more cocaine, more cocaine, ecstasy, back when it was actually ecstasy and not garbage. So anyway, the list goes on, and that was a party time for me. And that was back home in my home state of Alabama. And so there was a time there towards the end of my life in Alabama to where I said, you know what, I need to change this. Something has to be different. And that was my first real evolution, the first time I reinvented myself completely. I started to go to school, I started to learn things, the computer age was coming about, most people had a computer in their house at that point in time. Digital artwork was now becoming more of a regular thing, and you could learn to do that as a trade. So I did that, went to school. That was right around 2001 when the towers fell. And when the towers fell, I remember that specifically. It was a rough day. So after that, we got done with school, and my buddy said, hey, do you want to learn to snowboard? We were looking at continuing our education, and he said, hey, do you want to learn to snowboard? So I said, yes. We moved to Colorado and came out here to the Art Institute. Ultimately, it was a bad idea. It was a failure, but hey, whatever. It was a lesson learned. And we came out here, and then 6 months after I got out here, something crazy happened. My mom passed away. When she passed away, it was kind of a blow. I mean, we're talking about a woman that I had religiously, on a regular basis, said that I didn't like, I hated. I mean, ultimately, I loved her at heart because she was my mom, but man, this was, at that point in time in my mind, this was one evil bitch, man. I mean, dude, we're talking about somebody that could fly off the handle and just slam your face into a wall like that, like it was nobody's business. But she passed away. She had a major coronary, a heart attack, and she killed over 10 seconds. It was interesting. At first, I was like, oh man, that's tough, and I took it kind of hard, but I didn't realize what was coming because there was a landslide coming, and this was my second major reinvention of myself. This hit me like a ton of bricks. I went home for a little while. I dealt with that, and I wasn't the greatest human being at that point. I was not a good person. I was, I didn't want to work. I didn't want to have a job. I didn't want to be successful. I didn't want to be anything. And I realized how much my childhood had turned me into who I was. And it was really rough, man. It affected my job when I got back. It really affected my job. It affected relationships I had with people. I became incredibly angry. And I mean angry, dude. I would fly off the handle at anything. And that was, man, it was so hard. And after that, I started trying to put it back together. There's a song from that Tool does, and there's a line in there that goes, I know the pieces fit because I watched them all tumble down. And I started trying to put everything back together. And when I was putting everything back together, the pieces wouldn't stay together. And it was because there was this anger. I was dating incredibly hot chicks, and they didn't want to be with me. Why? Because I was pissed off and angry all the damn time. And then I tried for years to get myself to a good spot, to become stable, and I didn't have a reason. That was my major downfall. I never had a reason. There was no reason for me to make it work. There was no reason for me to go in and really dive in, find out what the problem was, and start to correct it, start to fix it, or at least start to shut it the fuck up so it would get out of my way. Then I met this really hot Asian girl, and we had this fantastic interaction, and we started seeing each other on a regular basis, and that was the point. That was when I finally had something to struggle, to strive towards. There was a reason. There was a need and a reason for me to figure this out and crush it and solve it, but it wasn't easy. It was not easy, and that was the third major invention of myself. When I completely had to look at what I was and say, this is not right. This needs to be fixed. I have to change this, or otherwise I was going to lose this beautiful angel that had come into my life, this chick that was really, I'm not even joking you, nothing but freaking sweethearts, rainbows, and bubble kisses. It was disgustingly beautiful all at the same time. It was fantastic. I didn't want to lose this one. And so I really started to work on being less angry, but I did it not by solving the problem. I did it not by diving in and finding out what was wrong. I did it by just squashing it, swallowing it. Every time that anger would come up, I would catch the anger coming up and I would swallow it. But what no one saw was that I was having conversations with myself. Yeah, me, this guy right here. I was actually every time I was alone, whether I was in the kitchen alone, or in the shower alone, or in the car alone, or anywhere, I was just talking to myself. It just was not good. It was difficult because I was telling myself all these negative stories. And then one day, my daughter was born. And that was the fourth major reinvention of myself. When my daughter was born, I didn't have a choice. I had to become something different. I couldn't be angry. I couldn't be, there's a fly. I couldn't be angry. I couldn't be sad or upset all the time. I would pass on this negative thing. And plus I had to work. Oh my God, I had to work. I had to make money. I had to be a better human being. So I started diving into the problem. I started trying to figure out what was wrong. I started solving my issues. I had lost a job because of my anger. Ultimately, it was because of my anger, because I couldn't tolerate someone that was negative in my environment, and that was not good. And so I really started to fix it. And the moral of the story that has brought me to this fifth major reinventation of myself, what you're seeing now, what's transpiring, is I have learned a very valuable lesson. All of this has led me to this point. And here's this lesson. Pay close attention. This is an important one. If my mother hadn't have been so screwed up, if my father, the sperm donor, hadn't have left, if my stepdad hadn't have been who he was and rough like he was, I wouldn't have been able to take such adversity. I wouldn't have been so strong. I wouldn't have been so flexible and nimble when it comes to bad situations. It's those bad situations that I went through that made me who I am. If I hadn't have done every drug under the sun, I wouldn't have known what a low was. If I hadn't have fallen on my face more times than I care to mention from a societal standpoint, I wouldn't be so resilient. If I hadn't have lost my mother, I never would have dove into those problems and learned to solve them or cope with them at least. And if I hadn't have made so many mistakes, I wouldn't be who I am. So the moral of the story is, half of the moral of the story is, what you go through in life is responsible for making you who you are. The second half of that story is how you deal with what you go through in life is also responsible for making you who you are. If you can learn to understand what has happened to you and how that has affected you and made you who you are, you will have a much better time of dealing with life's problems, life's things that get in your way, because ultimately you are a reflection of your past. But even more so, you are a reflection of the inner stories that you tell yourself, how you perceive and how you digest the things that have happened to you in the past. Another thing that I have learned in this latest incarnation of myself is that we are what we tell ourselves we are. And we get back what we give out. It is the most phenomenal truth that I have just recently learned. You have to give to get. You want to live? Give. Offer something of value to anyone that is willing to take it. And you will see life come back at you in a way you can't believe. You will see success and you will reap the rewards of that far beyond your dreams. Give to get. Give to live. Find out who you are, and if you don't like that, change it. But remember, you're not changing what you went through. You're just changing what you're going to go through. What you have gone through in life is responsible for making you who you are, and how you have digested that is responsible for who you are now. But how you deal with everything else from this point forward, that is what is responsible for who you will be, who you will become, the successes and the failures that you will go through. I have been through some shit, my friends, and this was the super edited, abbreviated version of it. And anybody that knows me in the past, oh God, you guys know. I've been through some shit. And if you're going through some shit and you need some help, you need a good word in your ear, you need somebody to tell you good things, there's my contact info. Use it. Hit me up. Shoot me a message, and I will remind you of how amazing you are and how positive your future is if you just chase after it. All you have to do is reach out. And if you don't want to reach out to me, if you want to stay anonymous, there's people out there for that. If you need help, if you need a hand to pick you up, look to your family, look to your friends, look to whoever you can. Because remember, beauty is all around you. You are not here to suffer. You are here to experience the world. You are here to have a blessed life. Just love yourself, give outward, and watch what happens. I love you. I'll see you next time.